Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me to discuss the California water market is Matt Payne, Principal of WestWater Research. Matt, welcome to Trade Talks. It's interesting to see that even water can be turned into a market. How does one come into possession of water?
Hi, Jill. Thanks for having me. So clearly everyone understands that water is an essential resource, but there are areas of the world where the total need for water exceeds the available resource. And California in the Western United States is one such place where there are limited supplies of water, but competing demands on that water from various economic sectors as well as the environment. So over the history of California, the limited supply of water has been allocated on a dual system of riparianism, which gives landowners rights to water if their land abuts a water course, and also prior appropriation, which is a first come, first served system. And the water in California in most years is over allocated, and that means that there have been more rights to that water doled out than physical water actually exists.
What are the various demands for water in California?
Sure. So in total in California, about 80 million acre feet are used annually on average. That total use varies from a low of 60 million acre feet per year up to over 100 million acre feet per year in particularly wet years. And the users of that water can be thought about in three categories. You have agricultural users, urban users, and environmental users. Now, the agricultural users are straightforward to understand. You have farms, ranches, and dairies. The urban users include everything from residences and businesses to industrial users like power plants and food processing facilities that tend to use large quantities of water. And any remaining water tends to be used for environmental purposes. So in-stream flows and wild and scenic rivers, delta outflows, wildlife refuges, uses of that nature.
How has demand evolved over time?
Sure. So historically, California experienced significant urban growth, and we saw demand among urban users growing substantially. Now, that all changed about 10 years ago. We started to see urban water demands level off, even though population was still growing, and that's largely attributable to conservation efforts. So we have leveling off urban demands. In contrast, on the agricultural side, we see a broad transitioning going on throughout the state from sort of lower value annual and forage crops to higher value permanent crops, fruit and nut trees, things of that nature. And those permanent crops tend to have high and inflexible water demands. So we're seeing agricultural water demands growing and becoming less flexible. And then on the environmental side, those environmental needs are sort of ever present and not going anywhere. So those will continue on in the future.
If California's water is allocated on the basis of entitlements, why do you need a market to trade?
Sure. So California's hydrology has followed a pattern of extended drought periods punctuated by very extreme wet years. And water trading is really a water management tool intended to address that variation in hydrology. So each year, the typical water user will look at their anticipated needs, look at the resources they have available, and seek to enter into market-based transactions to either monetize surplus water supplies that may be in excess of their needs, or acquire additional supplies to fill gaps between their needs and their supplies.
So it sounds like California already has a water trading market. Can you tell us what the current state of the market is?
Sure. So water's been traded in California on an informal basis for decades. The market for water in California, even though it's been around a long time, it's been slow to develop, and there are persisting inefficiencies. Currently, the most common type of trade we see is what's called a spot trade or a one-time transfer of water. We see about $400 million annually changing hands in that market. We tend to see extremely high prices and lots of trading activity during drier years when water is more scarce. And then in wetter years, we see lower prices and less trading activity. Now, what's interesting about this market is, even though there's 400 million per year changing hands on average, the market to date has been largely overlooked by the financial sector. There have been no financial products available to provide price transparency or help buyers and sellers manage price risk. And that's the need we're looking to fill with NQH2O and related products.
All right, Matt, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thanks, Jill.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.